Today, we are at the Freezout headquarter office with our local wildlife biologist Brent Lonner to talk about Freezout, its facility, and some of its history.
I'm Brent Lonner. I'm the area wildlife biologist for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks based at Freezout Lake. It's the end of February right now, and coming up fairly soon, we will be seeing our spring migration through Freezout Lake. We will be starting to update our website that does all the counts right around the first part of March. We'll do those all the way through daily, all the way through March into middle part of April. So if folks have an interest in finding those counts, they can either go through our Fish, Wildlife, and Parks website. I think if you Google it, the very end of March is usually the peak of the migration. Of course, Wild Wings, the event coming up here March 22nd to 24th, that's going to coincide hopefully with a good number of birds showing up at Freezout. I think if you go to the Wild Wings page too, you can also find our website. They have a link there. As far as Freezout itself, for folks that aren't aware, it's pretty hands-off as far as our management from a public use perspective. There's no fees tied to camping anyway, or daily use fees. You do have to get a conservation license nowadays. It's a one-time purchase for the license year, so it lasts for an entire year, and it's good for all of our state properties for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. I believe it's $10 for that conservation license. Outside of that, as far as Freezout, it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have one official camping area for folks that want to camp, but we also readily allow people to use the parking lots for camping as they need to, depending on their needs for camping. It's all primitive camping, no water. We do have some vault toilets scattered on the area, a few picnic tables in places, but it's pretty laid back as far as camping. Folks are usually pretty good about it, but we just try and make sure people are picking up after themselves. As far as pets, folks need to be aware that pets just need to be restrained this time of year. Leash is great, if not, as long as they're under good control through voice commands or a collar or something, shock collar, whatever it is, that works too. So, as far as other information on Freezout, we have 3 brochures that are tied to Freezout for us. You can find all these on our website or the Freezout Lake Wildlife Management Area Story Map. And these are the 3 brochures. This is just a general information brochure for Freezout, just general background info, and I'll get into a few details on that. There's a map on the inside, shows you the layout of the area, roads that are open, closed, parking areas. This one is one for snow geese. More tied to snow geese themselves, as far as some of the details and background on snow geese, and a little bit of how they use North America and how we know what we know about some of the snow geese that come through this area. And then the last one is a birding brochure. Pretty extensive brochure that has about 230 or 40 different species for folks that are really interested in all the details related to the birds and timing and presence on the area throughout the course of the year. As far as background on Freezout itself, Freezout's kind of unique in how it was developed. In basically around 1950s, it was developed into the system that it is now. It was really developed with strong ties to the local irrigation district when this area became a heavily farmed area for agricultural use, and all the irrigation water that was being put into the area, and that has strong ties to the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex and Gibson Reservoir and some of the other storage reservoirs around here. So in the 50s, when there became more of a need to manage Freezout in the water, between the Montana Fish and Game Department, which was called at the time, and the Army Corps of Engineers, we developed Freezout into a system of 6 different ponds in the main lake and Priest Butte Lake, and it's all a gravity fed system that we can move water based on a system of different water structures and checkboards throughout the course of the area. Of course, it has ties to the direct water we get from the irrigation district, as well as natural water sources that feed into the area. So, and it still works pretty good based on how it was developed then, 70-ish years later. So it's obviously tied also, in addition to being able to manage that water as a primary area, especially a staging area for waterfowl. Migratory birds in general, but a heavy emphasis on waterfowl and how they migrate through the area twice a year, once in the spring, coming up here quick, and then once in the fall. So we certainly have birds that are residents in the summer that nest here, but it's mainly a staging area for the bulk of the birds that come through the area. So with that in mind, with folks coming this spring, one thing we always like to have folks keep in mind is these birds are doing a fairly significant journey in their life. This time of year, heading from their southern wintering grounds, going to their northern nesting grounds. So we certainly want people to be able to see and use the area and see the birds and what it is, and how those birds use the area, not just freeze out but off the area, but obviously be able to respect the birds that are coming through and limit disturbance as much as possible to those birds. So viewing distances at a reasonable distance. There's no set distance for that, but with the amount of people on the area, they pretty well gauge a good distance based on what other folks are doing. And if we see people that are getting a little too close, we like them to back off sometimes. But depends on the birds, the type of birds, the number of birds, and what bodies of water they're using. So if we have ice conditions when folks start coming this spring, which we very well may have some ice, especially for the next 2 or 3 weeks at least, it's good to stay off that ice. It's not that the water's super deep in most places. Ice can be pretty sketchy ice, thin, not very reliable ice, and the mud underneath can be pretty thick mud. So if you go through the ice and you end up in the mud, it can be kind of a mess trying to get back out. So best just to avoid being on the ice. And oftentimes when we have waterfowl that come early and we don't have open water, they're just sitting out on the ice too. So again, it's easier just to avoid anything related to water, whether it's frozen or not, just to limit disturbance to birds. As far as folks using freeze out, especially along the highway stretch, that's a safety issue when people are going too slow on the highway. So Highway 89 goes right through a good portion of freeze out. So we need to have folks, and there's a lot of traffic on that highway, and if folks are using that and going something considerably slower than the speed limit, it's a safety issue, and as well as the issue of folks pulling off on the shoulder of the highway rather than use the parking areas. So we understand there can be birds right close to the highway in vicinities where we have water coming close to the highway, but ideally we need to have people using the pullouts that are scattered up and down the highway rather than going too slow or pulling right off on the shoulder of the highway. So Highway Department and Montana Department of Highway Patrol and the Sheriff's Office is tracking that stuff locally. So we need to be cognizant of that too. People need to be as best as possible. So if folks do come to freeze out, just try and be safe. When you're using the area, be respectful of the birds and the wildlife that are here. Be respectful of other people that are using the area, and have a good time. It's there for the public. We manage it first and foremost for all things wildlife, especially birds, but we want people to enjoy the area as well. So have fun and enjoy the area.
Nice.